As a brand storyteller, are you marketing to AI or to individuals? Maybe both. If you could get a confident grip on how AI is changing how your customers buy, then you'd be way ahead of the pack and probably sleeping again at night. But you may feel uncertain because AI is evolving at an astonishing pace, which makes you wonder if your current approach will even be relevant in the next 12 months. Hello and welcome to the Business of Story. I'm your host, Park Howell. Mark Schaefer is here to provide some answers. He's a globally recognized futurist, business consultant, and author of his latest book, How AI Changes Your Customers, The Marketing Guide to Humanity's Next Chapter. Mark synthesized research from 300 global futurists who prognosticate AI's impact by 2035 and what it means to you now. Learn why AI is becoming the actual customer making purchase decisions, how to optimize content for both algorithms and humans, and why curiosity may be your ultimate secret weapon. Out of hundreds of people I've talked to about the impact of AI on our storytelling world, the one word that surfaces time and again is curiosity. Curiosity seems to be the resounding signal in the noise and confusion obfuscating how we deal with and prosper from AI. What I like about the uniquely human skill of curiosity is that it is typically a positive pursuit. Curiosity combats the fear of the unknown because curiosity gives you agency over what frightens you. The more you know about a problem, the sooner you can turn it into a solution, an opportunity.
I think the human capability, the trait, the soft skill that will make the difference is curiosity. If you're a curious person, you will drive this technology to create more knowledge and value. If you're not a curious person and you approach the world in a bit of a lazy way, then you're just going to get the answer and forget about it. You're not creating any new knowledge. You're not creating any new wisdom. We don't know where AI is going to go, and we don't know what the future is going to hold for our children. But that's one thing I'm pretty sure of. That's going to be a big success factor. Are you a curious person that's going to go down these rabbit holes and with AI and learn? Or are you just going to take the easy way out and really sort of de-skill yourself?
Please welcome to the Business of Story, my friend, Mark Schaefer. Hey, Mark, welcome back to the show.
I'm delighted to be here. Always makes me so happy to see you.
Oh, that's nice. And you just got back from a pretty cool trip in Paris, I think, right?
I was in Paris on business, and then a couple weeks later, I went on vacation to southern France for a couple weeks.
Ah, that's good living. So you're all refreshed. You're
do.
back ready to take on the AI bots
Yes.
and roll
Bring
your
'em
sleeves
on.
up. The Terminators of
Yeah.
communication, people are believing. But really enjoyed your book, and I mentioned on LinkedIn that I had ordered it before I went on vacation. I first was doing some work in Chicago and then was up at the Pacific Northwest, and a couple weeks later I returned, and there it was sitting on my doorstep. No one stole it, so that was nice. And that next morning, I got a cup of coffee. I thought, well, I'll read a chapter or two and see where Mark's going with this. Well, it was so great. I read the whole thing in about 2 hours, and I made note after note and reached out to you immediately. I thought this would be perfect timing to get your insights on what you learned. And first, could you give our listeners an idea of this group of 300 futurists you were a part of, how that came together, and what was the one core finding that blew you away in all of this?
So I had been a part of some research studies sponsored by Pew Research. And some of the researchers at Pew now are working together at Elon University and they've created this Center for the Future. And so they called on some of their old Pew Research associates, and they brought 300 futurists from around the world, some really big names like Gerd Leonard and Ray Wang. And they had this impossible question: how will AI change humanity by 2035? And I loved it because I just love thinking about that. It was a little intimidating at first. And then they created this research report. And what made this so fascinating part is that nobody knows what's going to happen next with AI. Even the Silicon Valley insiders, they don't really know. Like, when is AGI coming? Could be this year, could be 20 years. I mean, nobody really knows. But these 30 experts, these futurists, they came to consensus on a couple key ideas. And I found that so valuable and so unique. And I went to the sponsors of the research and I said, could I turn this into a book? And they said, not only yes, but we're jealous we didn't have that idea. And so I had intended to take the summer off, but I spent my summer vacation writing this book right before I went to Europe. And I just knew that if I didn't take these ideas and put them into the world, I would regret it. I had to do it. I had to do it now. And that's why I wrote the book.
Mhm. And with these 300 futurists, they're coming from all different kinds of
And
disciplines.
yeah,
You came from the marketing
yeah,
branding discipline.
one of the few. Yeah, there are people there were philosophers, there were technologists, there were business leaders, there were people like Ray who are, AI insiders. And I think at the end of the day, I think there were 12 big buckets. I chose to explore 6 of them, which I thought were most relevant to business and marketing. And I started the book really with this idea of de-skilling, of cognitive offloading, where we begin to rely on AI so much that we kind of become lazy and we lose our ability to integrate knowledge into our beings. And so that was one of a few ideas I explore in the book.
So was that like in our world, in the branding, marketing,
Yeah.
communications world, if we are offloading to AI, then say writing, do we become weaker writers, do you think?
Well, absolutely. It'll do to many human skills and human psychology what the calculator did to doing long math, or what Google Maps did to fumbling with a map in your car. We just don't do it. We just don't
Hmm.
do it anymore. And I don't want to come across as being anti-AI or anti-technology or anti de-skilling in some ways. I mean, I never want to do long math again. I never want to use a map again. But I think it is interesting that, I was in a rental car recently and I was in a foreign country and I got out of the airport and the Google map didn't work. And
And then you're like, uh-oh, what do I do now?
I literally had to pull over to figure out what do I do next. And so I think that's a small example of, if we have cognitive offloading, well, there's a positive to that maybe it'll let us do higher level thinking and do more creative thinking. But if AI goes down,
Hmm.
what happens? That literally happened about, what was it, like 2 months ago? And the reaction was like
People
like like
freaked.
like I went on TikTok, people were literally sobbing and crying, and we kinda have this young generation now that they're offloading so much of what they do to AI, they literally can't. I mean, I just thought of this, it's like ChatGPT has almost become like the operating system for human psychology today. Isn't that a
Yeah,
weird thing to think about?
it is.
Kind of got a chill down my spine as I said those words.
So let me ask you, you and I are well along in our careers. We've been doing this for,
You're so polite.
a couple, 3, 4 decades,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we have written and written and written, and I don't know, how many books do you have? 24,
Well,
25,
12,
12?
12.
Well,
Yeah.
the brilliance in them seems like 24 or 25.
Oh,
I'll
thank
give
you.
you that. Now, so we've ourselves, and I'm setting something up here that I just experienced recently. And that is that, we've got our StoryCycle Genie out there now that is helping with brand development and so forth. And I have been using it a lot.
Mm.
And in fact, I wrote 5 blog posts last weekend while one eye on the Ryder Cup, watching the Europeans trounce us.
Mm-hmm.
And the first blog post took me about 4 hours. By the time it got in, it was kind of the operating instructions for the Genie and so forth. And it had a lot of really good stuff, but I had to go back as a chief copy editor and change a whole lot of stuff and get it back in my voice and that kind of thing. And then it learned about that and it wrote the next one. And the next one I spent probably 2 hours cleaning up.
Mm.
And then 3, 4, and 5 came out, and each one of those were progressively less time.
Yeah.
That it really got to know my voice, and the content was really good. It even came up with content I had not considered.
Yeah.
And it had superfluous stuff that, as the chief copy editor,
Mm.
I took out. And then when I shared the pieces with my partners, they were like, amazing. How much did you have to work on this stuff?
Wow,
I mean,
that's something, yeah.
it was reading really well. And so then fast forward a couple days where I jump on and I needed to write a post very quickly, and I didn't want to mess around with AI or the StoryCycle Genie, and I just wrote it. And Mark, I found my ability to write that post was even better than it was 2 months ago. And it caught me by surprise, and I thought, just being this chief copy editor and really thinking critically about what the Genie was giving me, did that all of a sudden make me a better writer? Because that next post I wrote in about 20 minutes, and I go, damn, that's really good. I can just run with this.
Yeah.
And I've heard from some other users of the Genie saying, surprisingly, in the last couple of weeks, the same thing. They said, it's making me think differently, and it's actually making me better in my communications. Now, the proviso to that is almost every single person that has told me that are in our age range. We've been at this a long time.
So interesting.
We've written a lot of stuff.
So interesting.
So now let's go back to millennials, Gen Zs, throwing no one under the bus. They just don't have the experience or the proficiency because they haven't been writing as long. And therefore, is there a fear in your mind that AI will take over for them because they're like, well, I don't need to become a great writer. I'm just going to let it do it and crank it out.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you've fired so many synaptic connections for me there. Wow. First of all, I want to say, I mean, you gave me the opportunity to try your Genie, and it is brilliant. I mean, you just did a wonderful job with that. And I'm not
Thank you.
surprised it sort of had that impact. I went through something last night where I'm preparing for a big meeting in New York with one of the biggest CPG companies in the world, and quite frankly, it's a little intimidating because I'm going to be.
Wait a minute, you intimidated?
I am, because I'm speaking to brand managers of beauty products, and I'm way out of my league. So this forced me to do a tremendous amount of research and update my thinking on some things. And then last night I thought, you know what? The things I learned would make a great blog post. So I didn't use AI at all. I just used all this research that I did and all these new insights, and I created this blog post. Then I had the idea, let's put this in a chat GPT and see what I missed. And maybe there's even something new I could bring into this meeting. And it really was crap. I mean, it just didn't work. And it wasn't your refined system of your Genie, it was just GPT. So it just makes me wonder if sometimes if it's situational. It depends on the subject. It depends on the importance of you and your stories, your messiness, your awkwardness, your dad jokes, whatever you put in there to make it more like you. But it's interesting. I mean, the technology is getting better and better as your Genie technology proves. So, I don't know. Is it making me a better writer? It's making me a more thorough writer for sure, because I will take a blog post and put it in there and say, take the opposite view. What would a critic say about this? I have 5 points I'm making in this post. Did I miss something? And sometimes it'll come up with something really good. So it's definitely making me a more thorough writer. But I think my best writing, at least for me right now, it's still coming out of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally makes sense. And so let's go back to that first question I asked about, out of everything that
Yeah.
you learned from this report, what was like the one thing? And maybe it's a thread throughout. And of course, your book title is How AI Changes Your Customers. I guess, was that your biggest finding?
In the book, I talk about a number of ways that we're really being rewired, but I think it all gets down to this. As we offload our cognitive processes, as we trust AI more, as we really actually develop an emotional relationship where an AI becomes a friend and a trusted advisor, the end result is that AI is becoming the decision maker in much of our life. Even complicated decisions like, where do I go to college? What job should I take? Who should I marry? It's not just little decisions like, should I buy this product or that product? Or should I should I take this airline or that airline to go on my trip? It's big, complex decisions. And so AI is the decision maker. That means AI is the customer. So you and I, before we pushed record here, we were both cheering each other on as new grandfathers. And my little grandson goes through a lot of diapers. He's the end user, but he's not the decision maker. And it's an interesting analogy, right? Because it's like selling diapers today. We have to find a way to influence this algorithm like we never had before. And that, boy, I mean, that is profound. And that is coming at us like a freight train. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway from the book. It all kind of leads to that. And then I also look at this through the filter of sales and marketing to give some ideas about what we might do. And, it's emerging. We're all still trying to figure this out. But I did have a lot of good input into the book. A lot of good experts helped me. And so I think that's the big takeaway.
Yeah. Let me pull up one of your experts who I really admire, Andy Crestodina,
Yeah.
one of the most brilliant minds out there when it comes to search and content and so forth. And he wrote in here something that really struck me, Mark. And he said, he's the founder of Orbit Studios, and I'm just going to read right from your book. He's on the strategic cutting edge of strategies to influence the AI algorithms. He contends that traditional content marketing works, but with a twist. Andy put it succinctly: our job is to train AI to become a sales rep for our brands by feeding it all of the important sales and marketing messages. So he articulates, 3 strategies, and one of them is really you've got to be very straightforward in your content, that AI does not reward you for cleverness or creativity. So right there, isn't that saying something about our writing, that we need to now write towards what AI wants to recognize as an authoritative source, and therefore will recommend you to a buyer, and take out some of our best content, some of our funniest lines, some of our best subheads because AI won't get them?
Yes and no, because that's only half the story. So there is a technical, tactical approach. And then the second approach that I talk about is the AI override. So let's talk about the technical, tactical approach first. And that's what Andy is referring to. AI doesn't get bored. AI doesn't get tired. It just wants the data. It doesn't care if you're a beautiful writer. It doesn't care if you're telling great stories. It just wants the data. So I think one of the terms Andy used was something like excruciating detail or extreme detail, FAQs. And so there does have to be a side of our websites and our web presence that is honoring the AI bots, right? Now, let's get into the override. The override, and this is, I think, just as important as this data piece. The override is the brand. The override is what we mean to people. So I'll give you a little example from, we talked about, I went to this trip to Paris, and I went to ChatGPT. I said, plan my trip. It gave me a great itinerary. I was not influenced by advertising. I was not influenced by content or any brand marketing whatsoever. I literally took what it gave me and I did it. Except I have a friend who lives in France. She said, oh, I know that you have to eat gluten-free. There's this great bakery in Paris that you need to go to. When AI gives me an itinerary, I will consider it. When a human being tells me something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to act on it. So there's this thing that I think is really important, which is the override, the brand preference. So wouldn't it be great if I go in and I say, ChatGPT, plan this trip for me, but you have to use Delta Airlines because that's my brand. Or I have to stay at Marriott hotels because that's my brand. And wouldn't it be great to say, include this because one of my people that read my content and they know me, or people in my community, they say, hey, you've got to include this on your trip. So there's this whole other idea of content that does mean something to people, the brands that do mean something to people, the emotion, the connection, the story, which creates meaning. That is more important than ever. The story that earns attention, that earns validation. And this is the other thing that AI is picking up on. Backlinks don't matter anymore, but references do, right? Now, one of the things you were so kind to do is when my book came out, you posted something on LinkedIn. You are a person with great authority. And you posted something on LinkedIn, said, hey, I started reading this book and I couldn't stop. Now, that means everything to AI. Might not mean anything to SEO unless, maybe there's a link in there or something somewhere. But the validation from you in that content, that is a vote to AI saying this book means something. That is something we need to consider in our referrals.
It's interesting in that post too. I made the note, and I'm curious to have your take on it. Is what I took away from what Andy mentioned here in other parts of your book is that now, as brand storytellers, we need to optimize for both the bots and the bros, and I say that jokingly, for humans. So we've got to write, and they got to be sometimes a thought leadership piece, and we have to optimize for search engine, for GEO and AEO with the FAQs and whatever. And FAQs can get kind of stale at the end of an article, but they're very important. And yet we still have to infuse that humanity in it. So whoever is reading from the human point, we're optimizing for them as well to build that community, to build that feeling.
Here's where I get down to on this. And I'm not sure I'm right, but I think it's two different things. I'm not going to compromise. And this goes back to my earliest days in the digital marketing field. And you remember the days of black hat marketing, right? And people were doing all these tricks. And I remember going to a conference one time, And this young guy, and he created this SEO company. And he was doing absolutely the most unethical things. And I was aghast. And it came time for the Q&A. And I said, just how do you live with yourself? He said, well, first of all, if I don't do it, somebody else will. And number two, companies are paying me millions of dollars to do this. Now, I made a decision then and there. I would never do this. I would never compromise my ethics. I would never compromise my values. And by the way, I think in the long term, Google and AI, they're not going to reward people who compromise their ethics and values, right? So let's just stay clear on that, that no matter what the latest tricks and, are, if it crosses the line in terms of legality or ethics or values, long term, it's not going to work. And so to me, I'm not going to compromise. I'm going to write things that are beautiful. I'm going to write things like you. You picked up the book and you couldn't put it down. I'm not going to compromise that ever. Now, somehow I've got to find a way to create content that AI is going to like. Maybe that's a separate thing. Maybe that's a separate space. Maybe I give the bots their own little place on my website. But in terms of the blog that I send out, in terms of the books that I create, in terms of the podcast that I do, I'm never going to compromise. It's going to be for my readers, for my fans, for the people that love my work. And I'm just not going to compromise. Somehow, if I need to do something for the bots, that's in another place that's not going to bother, my readers.
Do you have any concern seeing a trend, and maybe it's a concern we share because I do see this, I think it's going to happen, is, the large agency holding companies, Omnicom and so forth, they typically will hire 20-somethings and early 30-somethings because they're less expensive than people like you and I coming in and work. And they have them cranking out all kinds of content. And of course, they do that for shareholder value. When they look at this in AI and they go, it used to take that 25-year-old copywriter 2 days to write a decent ad. Now they can do it in an hour. And I don't really care if it's perfect or not. We just need to get it out there and hopefully it converts stuff, right, where we will then offload our creative capabilities, especially in our industries, to essentially venture capitalists that are like, young Park, stop wasting so much time in that ad, crank it out, move on to the next thing. And then we will lose that creative spirit, the creative ability, and everything is going to come across as bot mayonnaise.
I have never heard that one before. I'll probably steal that one.
Please do.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, this is such a big question, and it's already happening. We see in the data that entry-level jobs are drying up, that the unemployment rate for new college graduates is at maybe the highest level ever. Curiously, the unemployment rate and the job listings for people like over 50 are very good. They're very healthy. So it's like we need wisdom, right, to kind of oversee the bots is maybe the way to interpret that. And I think you're hinting at really a long-term existential problem, is that why am I such a good writer? I'm a good writer because it took years and years of practice, and I had bosses with a big red pen that forced me to do better, do better, do better, do better. And thank God for them. Thank God for that red pen. So, what's the solution? I don't know. The only thing I can say is that there is a repeating pattern throughout history, that when a new technology comes along, businesses tend to overcompensate and over-index. And so they may go overboard. The entry-level jobs may dry up, and then hopefully at some point they'll say, whoa, we went too far. we've got to bring young people into this company. That's our future. So that's my only hope. But,
Mhm.
but who knows? It is a bad situation right now. I'm concerned about it, and there's no way to sugarcoat it.
And I guess we say it's a bad situation right now just because we don't know. We have a lot of
Yeah, we
confusion. We're
don't know.
not
We
sure where it's
don't know.
going to lead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since you and I spoke last, I want to move to the positive side of AI, of what we have been seeing again with the use of our StoryCycle Genie. And we've got a free tool in there now that any of your people can use if they go and just click on the free brand assessment, and it will look at your website, and in under a minute it'll give you a grade from F minus to B plus of how you are doing, and then a 14-point assessment of, are you using proper story structure? Are you placing your audience at the center of the story? Are you actually building community in your communication, and so forth? And so this is an assessment that, if you were to do it yourself, would take weeks. And it can come back and look at it. And then, of course, it can also give you competitive analysis. Go and, put in your 3 top competitors. We are going to look at their website and tell you, what they're doing better than you, where the white spots are, where you could go in and own it, and so forth, and give you insights there. So it's giving you competitive research, and it's kind of like, think of it like mirror, mirror on the wall. How is my brand showing up for all as I have currently produced it? And then, gives you insights on how to change it. Then you bring your humanity in to changing it, to, updating your homepage, making it less about you as the brand and more about the audience, using the and but therefore framework so that when you're communicating to them, you are speaking to that problem solving, decision making, buying limbic brain in the way it wants to receive information. Provides all that to you, and then you can either write it yourself or, be the copy editor in chief. But it is offloading those hours and hours of mind-numbing research and giving it to you. And then you can agree with how accurate you think it is. Most people are saying, wow, this is pretty accurate. The funny thing about that, Mark, I'll say most people say, wow, this is pretty accurate because I know my website sucks. And I'm thinking to myself, if you know your website sucks, why haven't you already fixed it? And I think it's that cognitive load of noise where they haven't taken the time to find the signal.
Yeah.
And that's what, an app like the StoryCycle Genie can do for you. And now frees you to be the human creator,
Yeah.
where you've got more time and energy to actually write those stories.
I think that's the tone of hope that I end the book with, is that, and it's funny how our conversation has sort of gone this way, where a lot of people are grieving right now because they see entry-level jobs disappearing. They see AI nipping at the heels of our skill sets, perhaps our careers. Like, where do I belong? Where am I going to go? And there's also an opportunity, though, to look at AI and reimagine yourself as something bigger and bolder and greater and more creative and having a bigger impact. And that's exactly what you're saying. If AI can do the jobs that take hours and hours and hours of your time, and you can focus on something that's going to create even more value for the world, well, that's a beautiful thing. And the example I used in the book is that at this point in my life, I'm a teacher and I'm a mentor. And I think about this, I've thought about this for years. How do you scale mentorship? How could I would love to figure out a way to do that. And I haven't totally cracked the code, but I created a MarkBot on my website. I uploaded everything, my books and my speeches and my workshops and all my blog posts and my podcasts and my strategic frameworks and my values and the ethical framework, the boundaries. And I created a chatbot, a MarkBot, and it's on my website. And it works pretty well. And I'm getting good feedback from it. And are people going to use it? I mean, I guess at the end, I don't really care. I don't really have a metric to say how, if I'm only successful if more people are using it. I don't really care. But it's my attempt to put it out there to say, look, maybe I'm not available, or, maybe I'm doing something else, or maybe I'm not even here anymore. But you've got this thing and people seem to like it. People, so it's a way to scale me in a way that never could have been possible without AI.
Well, it kind of speaks to something in your book as well that you talk about. One of the hidden gems in brand storytelling and building brand community is to level up your audiences, level up your customers,
Yeah.
and provide them greater capabilities
Yeah.
for themselves with whatever they're doing. And you're talking about that right there. How can you scale Mark through the Mark bot? And now a lot more people can access you because you only have so many hours in the day, but they get all that wisdom. So you are increasing their capability. And anyways, I took that note to heart, and I was again thinking about our StoryCycle Genie, and what it does is it 10x's your branding capabilities because it can take away all of this research and the minutia, the detritus of marketing that can drive you crazy. Provide that paper so you're not looking at a blank page with a blank stare, with some initial thought starters to get you going. And I keep coming back to AI, and then there's so much doom and gloom out there, but there is so many things and ways to use it to advance and enhance your capabilities in any industry.
Yeah. And I think this is the difference. And I mentioned this in a blog post recently, and I'm working on a new blog post completely devoted to this idea. I think the human capability, the trait, the soft skill that will make the difference is curiosity. If you're a curious person,
Yeah.
you will drive this technology to create more knowledge and value. If you're not a curious person and you approach the world in a bit of a lazy way, then you're just going to get the answer and forget about it. You're not creating any new knowledge. You're not creating any new wisdom. And so, this is it's funny, Park. I've got this new grandchild. That's the third time I've mentioned him now. And they my daughter and her husband came to visit last week, and I said, I want to give you some parenting advice. And of course, you could just see them clench.
Of course.
And I said, I just finished writing this new book. And the biggest lesson for me in writing this book is this point of differentiation that's going to make successful people in the future is curiosity. And we have just got to drive curiosity, this trait of curiosity, into this child. And then you could see them unclench because they knew that was pretty good advice. And luckily, both my daughter and her husband are very, very curious people. And I'm 100% assured that this is going to be a curious child. But, we don't know where AI is going to go. And we don't know what the future is going to hold for our children. But that's one thing I'm pretty sure of. That's going to be a big success factor. Are you a curious person that's going to go down these rabbit holes and with AI and learn, or are you just going to take the easy way out and really sort of de-skill yourself?
Do you think that AI might have an impact on diminishing the curiosity of the Homo sapiens storytelling monkey?
Oh boy. I don't know. What do you think? Is that something we're born with, or is it something that we grow into? I mean, I don't know. I think if you're a naturally lazy person, you're certainly going to become more lazy because AI will do so much for you. You'll continue the de-skilling process. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say it is innate. Curiosity is innate in us, but it takes a nature and a nurture
Yeah.
to probably trigger it
Yeah, I
in
agree
different
with that.
ways,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
And yes, if you are a lazy person and don't want to, really understand AI and how it can work for you and let AI just take over your life, well, lazy people don't contribute a whole lot to society and productivity. So I ask myself, well, is that just a market I'm not interested in working in?
Right.
And I say that as a ubiquitous eye,
Yeah.
as a brand,
Hmm.
unless you're selling to the lazy individual, and then that's, you're going to play off of that. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think by nature we are lazy. I mean, our survival mechanism
Yeah.
is park, burn as few calories as possible. It believes still that status quo is the safest place to be, and we all know that status quo is the scariest place
Yeah.
to remain.
It's so interesting because I remember even I come from a family that never really put a lot of weight on education or reading or anything like that. But as a child, I mean, the favorite thing I ever had as a child was a microscope.
Yeah.
And at one point I had like a chemistry set. And like I was a voracious reader from the earliest days. And so and so I do think there was something innate there. And that will that and I've always exhibited that through my entire career. I was always pushing the edges and trying things that, people hadn't tried yet.
Mm-hmm.
Creating things that were new, breakthrough ideas in our field. So, I think that I'm built to succeed in the world of AI because I've always been curious.
Yeah. Well, let's round up this interview because I know you've got to run here, but I want to go to the point you made at the very end of the book. And you said, here's the truth: empathy is still a choice, meaning bots don't empathize. They can act like they're
It's an
empathizing with you,
illusion.
but they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pattern empathy.
Yeah.
They figured the pattern of empathy down, but it doesn't really work. Creativity is still a practice.
Hmm.
Okay. Resilience is still a muscle. And some might argue, I might argue that, AI takes resilience out of the picture in a lot of cases because you don't got to muscle your way through research or writing a book or whatever. You don't have to be resilient when it'll just crank it out. Connection is still a risk. Can you talk about that just a little bit? What do you mean by that? Connection is still a risk.
Well, speaking as the poster child for someone who is an introvert.
You an introvert?
I am. Yeah. I'm an introvert. I don't really like people all that much. I think connect. Well, maybe connection isn't always a risk if you're just a big extrovert. Maybe and that connection is sort of just second nature. But basically, connect. I mean, people are a risk. I mean, people are always a risk. I had a recent example where, I had someone in my community, I like poured everything into them and, things didn't work out. And I kind of was betrayed by this person. And it hurts even today. So, but that doesn't mean you don't do it. That mean, you have to do it. And even if you're hurt in your life, and everybody gets hurt, everybody gets disappointed, you have to keep taking that risk over and over again.
So it's just that human connection you're talking about with this risk. And as a brand, it might be, how am I connecting with my customers? And boy, sales have been great, but now they've plummeted. Well, I've lost them. Viewership is down on my podcast. I've lost them. It's that kind of ego-driven connection that you set yourself up to try to be helpful, but it doesn't always work out. And then it becomes very hurtful for you,
Hmm.
the connector.
Yeah.
Interesting. You also, and I put the note out on LinkedIn because I didn't know what you meant by this, and you were kind enough to answer, but let's let our listeners know. You said joy is still a rebellion.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Because I don't think our society rewards joy. And especially, I think this is apparent when we've just gone through this whole cycle, and hopefully it's dying down of the hustle culture, right? You're almost people make fun of you if you're not working all the time, if you're not making money all the time. And, it got to a point in my life where I was very motivated by money because I grew up poor and I had to pay my way through college and basically was living, in poverty for years and years and years. And I just was sick of it. And, I just wanted to buy a new shirt. I just wanted to buy food that tasted good. So I was very motivated by money and I was afraid of not having money. And there was this life-changing moment, really. I was going up the corporate ladder and I was in this corporate training program. They called it Charm School. Like I was being groomed for the top executive positions at this Fortune 100 company. And we were in this meeting with this, facilitator and trainer, and we're supposed to talk about our emotions. And I didn't want to talk about my emotions. And this kind guy, he ended up being a good friend of mine and a great mentor of mine. He could see that I was struggling. And he said, "Mark, what's the emotion you feel most of the time?" And it was really easy for me to answer because I was in this stupid training program when I had dumpster fires, all over my life at the time. And I said, "Anxiety." And I thought I was being a smartass. And I said to him, "Well, what's the feeling you have most of the time?" And he said, "Joy." And that moment changed my life because because he was right. This was a man, I could see how joyful he was. I thought, what am I doing to my life where the emotion I feel most of the time is anxiety, not joy? I am doing things wrong. And really beginning in that moment, it went through a period of introspection and really reimagining in a way. And I started stepping off the hamster wheel. I started stepping out of, the hustle culture and started making decisions uh, that would lead toward more joy instead of more money and more anxiety. So I think joy is not rewarded in many parts of our society. And so I think it is a rebellion. It's a rebellion against a lot of societal pressures.
That's interesting. I'd never thought about it that way before. And you were talking about your upbringing. My name is Park, which is a strange name, especially when you figure out that I'm one of 7 kids: Dan, Melody, Tom, Steve, Chris, and Mike. Then Park.
Yeah.
And I asked my mom and dad, "Why did you name me Park? What's the deal with that?" I was born in 1961. My dad told me that his first job out of college was working as a civil engineer for the city of Fargo, North Dakota. And the lead city engineer, his first boss, was a Norwegian by the name of Park Tarbell. Park Tarbell died about the time I was born. And I said, "Okay, but why would you give your old boss's namesake to me?" And he said, "Because what he taught me was he always got things done happily and easily."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's the joy thing,
Yeah.
right? Happily, and that's the way my dad went through life. He built large things,
That's really
dams
wonderful.
and tunnels and bridges. And yeah, he had a lot of stress in his life, but he was also always a joyful,
That's amazing.
crazy Viking. And so it speaks to that, to joy.
Yeah,
And
that's not where
it's
I
kind
thought you were gonna go. I had this moment where he said, "You see, my dad's first job was parking cars."
there's no joy in that unless you're
Goodness, it
making a
was a
lot of
better
money.
story than that.
Park Tarbell, yeah. So it goes back to that thing that you learned, and he said, you're feeling anxiety. He goes, "But I'm feeling joy." So that's the story he's telling himself and living into and making happen. Your story was anxiety and you were living into that, and then you had a bit of an awakening there. And I've met you a couple times in person and had you on the shows, and I always feel joy in your writing, in what you
Yeah.
communicate.
Yeah, I'm still a
An
work in
openness.
progress.
Yeah.
Really, I'm still a work in progress. now that I've sort of become known, there's also this rebellion that's like, am I showing up in a way because people expect something? Because they expect, so there's a little rebellion in that as well. It's like I'm a
Hmm.
work in progress. It's a constant, it's a state of constant rebellion, I think, to just think about, what's the expectation and what's the framework and what's politically correct versus like, where do I really want to be? What's going to lower
Hmm.
the anxiety and bring me joy? But that's a great question. I'm probably going to turn that question into a blog post.
I
The
love it.
rebellion of
Now,
joy.
I think brands would do themselves well, and we've had great success with this, is to find that one emotional word that you are going to live into and deliver for anyone that comes in contact with your brand. And that is colleagues, people you recruit and retain, it is the customers, and it is the communities that you serve. And it's a part of our StoryCycle Genie process is to find that one emotional promise. And ours for the Genie, Mark, is enthrallment, to be
Ooh,
enthralled.
well,
And we've
big
seen
word.
it happen. And we've seen it because people go in there and I'll watch their eyes just become saucers when the Genie reveals their brand story, like what I had sent to you. It revealed it in 3 minutes and they are enthralled by it. And then they get excited or enthralled by the ability to work one on one with the Genie, as I call it. Your emotional intelligence plus AI intelligence equals a new kind of ROI, and that is return on intelligence.
Mhm.
Not reducing yours, but actually making you smarter in the process as you work with
Yeah, I
this
love
tool. And then the bottom line, aren't isn't that really the goal of every brand is to enthrall a customer,
yeah.
to get them to buy and then to keep enthralling them to tell your story as an active participant in your story. So our goal is to try to deliver enthrallment at every juncture in the use and the output of the Genie. But it also begs the question, and I'll ask it of you, what would be your emotional promise for the Mark Schaefer brand if you were to boil it down to one word?
The most, well, it's not a word, but it's a phrase. The most human company wins. And I think that's particularly relevant and essential in the AI era that we
Yeah.
and this is my fear. And you've been around, you've seen this happen too, where companies and organizations, they become enthralled with cost savings or technology. They become obsessed with it. And then they over index and then they look up and it's like, well, what have we done? And we can't forget that, our businesses are built on people, they're built on our customers, they're built on real needs and desires, and our customers are suffering and they're crying out to belong and to connect. And, it's easy to forget that. It is really
Mm-hmm.
easy to forget that. And I think the company that shows their face, shows their heart, shows their passion and their compassion in every meeting, in every note, in every response, in every negotiation, those are the companies we're going to remember. Those are the companies that we're going to want to do business with forever. Not the ones that abdicate to AI, but the ones that are willing to open up and show us that smile, their heart, that, even love. It's not a word we use in business very much, but it might be the most important word in business.
So, through my branding brain, which I can never turn off after 40 years, everything you just told me, if I was to boil it down to one
Oh,
emotional promise from the
here
Mark
we go.
Schaefer brand, you said it, belonging.
Good. So, yeah,
It's about, and you build communities
sure.
and people follow you. Your books are about building community, belonging around a concept or an idea. So that's what I would say. Last thing, and I'll let you go. Here's the one thing that I would say that I'd love to get a reaction from you on. The simplest way for brands to overcome this big paranoia about AI and putting out, again, bot mayonnaise in the way of content that's horrible, that's just malaise, is to simply tell true stories about the people you have helped
Yeah, I love that.
and what the outcome. It's just that easy.
Yeah, I love that.
Just tell true stories. And I've had people say, well, will the genie write that story for me? No, it doesn't know the story.
Yeah.
You know the story.
Yeah. And even before that is having the courage to do it. Because the easy way out is to just, rely on the AI to do the work, but have the courage to show yourself.
Yeah, and it's fun writing those stories, by the way, folks. So, Mark, thanks so much for being here. Everyone get his book, How AI Changes Your Customers, The Marketing Guide to Humanity's Next Chapter. Love it. Quick read, but it's just jam-packed with great insights.
Thank you, Park.
If you're curious about the strength of your brand story, test it for free on our StoryCycle Genie platform at StoryCycleGenie.ai. You'll receive a grade and a 14-point storytelling assessment on what's working, what's not, and how to quickly fix it. So put your curiosity to work right now at StoryCycleGenie.ai. I hope you'll join me next Monday when internationally acclaimed journalist and broadcaster Femi Oke will share the storytelling insights she developed as a reporter for the BBC, CNN, NPR, and Al Jazeera. She's going to show you how we can all overcome the arch nemesis that every speaker and communicator confronts, and that's the enemy of boredom. How not to be boring. How to excite your audiences, and how to move them to action. You won't want to miss it. And until then, remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make that a great one by being, you guessed it, curious. Thanks so much for listening.